Humans kinda suck. We waste, we hunt, we sometimes even eat steaks with ketchup, but overall we take from the land that nourishes us, giving little in return and refuse to acknowledge the consequences. After Us, an atmospheric 3D platformer taking place in a world ravaged by an unknown catastrophe of mankind's own doing, takes aim at our anti-environmental greed by forcing us to see its potential impact, and it does so with the subtlety of a wrecking ball to the groin. After Us has you playing as Gaia, the spirit of life, who dashes, jumps, and wall runs her way through wretched post-human landscapes to find the souls of extinct animals, the last of their kind, and give them new life, and hopefully Earth another chance to thrive. Once your first soul is saved, that of an adorable dachshund who prances around and barks his thanks, the game opens up and allows you to tackle other souls via whichever path is available to you. The story consists of the collection of each soul and leaves the bulk of its content to environmental storytelling. Anybody looking for a cohesive, interesting plot will not find it here, which is fine, as long as you come at it with the right expectations. While the ravaged terrain of After Us is intended to be a harrowing look at humanity's misdeeds, it sure is pretty to look at, most of the time anyway. Levels take place in familiar biomes, suburbs, cities, farms, and harbors, but appear as if frozen in time, with husks of cars floating in midair to serve as jumping platforms, machines aimlessly doing their jobs with a rhythmic metallic clink, and bodies of former humans seemingly turned to stone in an instant. It's a surreal and effective setting with superb art direction at times, and the game does a great job of mixing up the scenery and color palette to excellent effect, ensuring you rarely traverse the same area enough to get sick of it. I fell especially in love with the radial burst of life effect, where you use the left trigger to sprout grass and vines from every surface around you in an instant. It's stunningly beautiful and does a great job of making you feel like a force of nature to be reckoned with. The way Gaia's footsteps leave behind a trail of flowers is a lovely touch too, reminding me of Okami, one of my favorite games of the PS2 era. After Us' soundtrack is quite good too, with melancholic synths thrumming in the background as you make your way through these ruined worlds. Some of the levels in After Us are absolutely massive. That said, performance-wise, it doesn't always keep up. I mostly played After Us on an RTX 4080, and while the frame rate remained mostly locked, there were frequent perceptible stutters during gameplay, and loading into new areas could cause noticeable hitching and frame drops. Thankfully, the developers are aware of these issues and are actively working on a fix, but naturally, I can't speculate on if it will be fixed for launch. The stuttering especially wasn't a huge deal, and either got better as I played or I didn't notice it as much, but still hurt the immersion a bit. From what I can tell though, After Us is somewhat of a demanding game. My rig had no trouble holding 60 FPS on max settings, and I imagine many others will be fine as well, but the Steam Deck is a different story. While the game launches without issue, even dropping all settings to low barely holds steady at 30 FPS, with frequent drops anytime the screen gets busy. I won't go as far as to call it unplayable, but given that visuals are a huge appeal to this game and playing it this way looks ugly as hell, I would not recommend it on Steam Deck until some serious optimization is done. It's also worth noting that as far as accessibility settings, After Us is pretty lacking at the moment. Controls are not remappable with only inversion of the X and Y axis allowed, the game is unplayable with keyboard and mouse, requiring a controller, and certain graphics options like the ability to go beyond 60 FPS or toggle off what appears to be a fairly aggressive film grain are noticeably absent. But enough about visuals. Is the game actually fun to play? Well, mostly. There are a few elements to After Us' gameplay. One is traversal of its sprawling environments where lots of platforming happens but without much in the way of challenge or stakes. Some traversal could be described as a sightseeing tour with sprinkles of environmental storytelling, but there's enough platforming to break it up in the form of wall running, rail grinding, and dashing to keep it from getting too monotonous. That said, while the general lack of challenge keeps the platforming from getting frustrating, it feels a bit like a missed opportunity. Controlling Gaia feels floaty and lacks momentum. Rather than a seamless transition from one obstacle to the next, you'll often do something like dash and then jump, which halts all your forward momentum for some reason, or have to carefully pause to mount a grind rail in just the right way to not fall through it. Typical platforming fare like jumping between rails while grinding looks and feels very clunky. You'll be grinding in lightning speed, but when you switch rails, Gaia will suddenly halt to do the rail switching animation and back to lightning speed from there. The lack of fluidity in the animation is noticeable, and in a game so focused on immersive visuals certainly dings it a bit. I love platformers where fast movement and momentum is a huge part of the experience, games like The Pathless or Wavetail, and sadly, After Us sits in their shadow when it comes to actual movement. Combat is in a similar position. Occasionally, former humans, known in this world as devourers, will come hunting for you and require you to spam the left trigger in their direction to release their souls. These encounters are very easy, and I don't think I died once, but are so simplistic that the combat quickly falls into a pattern of run away or hold left trigger to create distance from them and take them out one by one. It really doesn't come up often enough to feel annoying and adds a bit of variety to the gameplay, but again, its simplicity makes something feel missing. The Devourers naturally lead me to my next point because visually they appear as stone-skinned humans with garbage like plastic bottles and paint cans growing out of their skin. Afterus has a noble environmental message at the heart of its storytelling, but its execution is crude and ham-fisted as can be. This is a game where you'll be attacked by sentient plastic bags that fly around the environment, run away from giant excavators and fields of discarded garbage, and drown in lakes of oil. Its version of nuance is as subtle as having Al Gore grab you by the throat and whisper sweet nothings in your ear about responsible composting. And as much as I support any message that demands we take care of the only planet we have, it feels like the game has things to show but not much to say. Look, I won't pretend some thematic clumsiness ruins the game, but it's so heavy-handed that it sometimes undermines its own atmosphere with the silliness that ensues. While Afterus's hammering home of its themes can get a little much, I will say many of these environments and enemies are pretty anxiety-provoking on their own. The Devourers are creepy and move with intense, malicious purpose. Statues of former humans look mournful or despondent. Sequences like dashing away from trophy hunters while avoiding their flashlight beams or getting grabbed by tentacles reaching from a pool of oily sludge can be freaky and sometimes shocking. So even if these things don't cohere into an especially insightful whole, the atmosphere can be effective in its own right, so be warned, Afterus is not a chill, relaxing game, and it isn't meant to be. Afterus is a mostly enjoyable time that mixes environmental spectacle with fun traversal, but for every step forward, it takes half a step back. There's plenty of memorable scenery, but a lack of interesting level design or tight gameplay. As a result, it can feel like going through the motions, but with dots of inspiration sprinkled throughout. Combined with the clumsy messaging, Afterus could have been a fantastic, unforgettable experience, but settles for being a pretty decent one. It has a unique vision and is reasonably sized at around 7 hours for a quick run, or a few more to get the collectible spirits. Despite not resonating much with me, I suspect it'll be a cult classic among those willing to overlook the flaws I mentioned. For everyone else, I'd wait for a sale or bundle.
Thank you so much for supporting clickbait-free independent content here on YouTube. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe to help us bring a voice to the voiceless ones in gaming, and be sure to check out patreon.com/idreamofindiegames, where we can together defeat the gaming echo chamber.